The next thing I want to cover is looping in a little bit more detail. So let's make a basic array that just contains numbers so that it's easy to verify that what's going on is what we want to have going on. So here's a bunch of numbers. And as I showed last time, there's the for in loop. So I can say for item in numbers, console log numbers item. Right, and this is going to define item as a kind of temporary variable that only exists for this one single loop, and it goes through everything in here. It always adds 1 to itself, so it goes through every piece inside this array and just writes that out to the console. So if I want to do something more complex, I'd need to do the more verbose for loop, in which, you know, for in just takes a variable, and then the array, the more comprehensive for loop, takes basically 3 separate statements inside of the parentheses, and then in the curly brackets it's the same. So it just takes, you know, something that should happen every time it iterates. So I'm going to say print out, well, I guess we'll call this item just to be consistent. We're going to just write out what's at that position inside of the array. So here we have to define 3 things, all separated by semicolons. The first thing is the variable that we use, so similar to this one, we're going to define item. But in this form of loop, you can specify a value that item is supposed to start at. So I'll explain more about this in a second when I do kind of the reverse of iterating. I'm going to iterate through numbers in the reverse order. But now we're going forward. So the next thing we define is basically when the loop should stop. In this for in loop, it just stops automatically when it reaches the end. But here you have more control, so you can say, you know, I want to stop when item is smaller than 5, right? So I only want to go through the first couple of elements inside of this array. And the last thing you have to define is what to do with item at every loop. So in this case, we're going forward, so we just add 2 plus signs, which indicate that we want every item in the sequence to be displayed. So as you can see, we're just getting the first 5 elements because we're telling item, you know, we're telling the loop that once item is equal or bigger than 5, stop. So now what we could do is so I'm hitting the up key to go to what I've entered previously. We can say that item should actually start at, let's say, the length of numbers, right? Which is the last, which is the number of elements inside of this array. And since we're going backwards, we'll say item has to be, well, let's say it's bigger than 0. And to go backwards, we decrement item, so we put 2 negative signs. So now we're going through items backwards. And let's go back to the forwards example. You don't always have to go to every item in the array. You can also say, let's put this to numbers.length so that we're going through the entire thing. You can also say item should jump to every, you know, second item inside of every second element inside of the array. So right, so now we're just printing every second one. So if you want to do odd, even, or any other kind of ways of iterating through a list of items, this is how you would basically do it. And as you can see, we're using the length property here, so this is inherent to every array, numbers.length. It tells you how many things are inside of it.